Hello everyone and welcome to third episode of Honor with Alumni. For this episode, we have with us Arpita Agarwal, and let me introduce him the way his friends do. So, AIR won in IIT JEE, state rank one in AIEEE, rank one in Advanced Digital Mathematics Olympiad 2012, KPI scholar, 96.4% in CBSE board, 98% in PCM, NTSC scholar, he's cleared International Chemistry Olympiad. Arpit is one of the most efficient people I have ever met. Interested in social sciences, politics, thinking, biology as well. He finds time to do everything that he likes apart from excellent academics. A national level quizzer, a great observer. He carries with himself confidence about everything that he does. No wonder his friends are as impressed with him as everyone else in the country is. And that is how his friends introduced him in the front pages of his book that was called My Encounter with IIT JEE, which he wrote uh, while he was in second year of college pursuing BTech in CSE from IIT Delhi. So with that, let me just welcome Arpit to our new episode. So hi Arpit, welcome to Honor with Alumni. It's a
Uh,
pleasure having you with us.
Thank you so much, Varunesh, for that generous welcome, if I might say that. And I think the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's definitely a privilege to be talking to on air with alumni.
Thanks for being a part of this video. So in this video, we'll talk about uh, what Arpit has been doing these days and how has his journey at IIT and after IIT been. So he's currently working at Tower Research, and it's been 4 years that he's working with Tower Research, and he's currently in New York. And so we'll be talking about uh, how has his life been there and a lot of more things. So, so I'll start by asking you about how has life in New York been? Like, do you miss Delhi, especially now that you have to stay home most of the time?
Yeah, life in New York has been quite interesting. So I moved here in November, and by mid-March, we already had the pandemic in full force. So that's when the stay-at-home order started. So yeah, I haven't really, lived the New York life that I would have envisioned when I moved here. A lot of outgoing activities that everyone characterizes New York with. Those I haven't really been able to, but I think I've enjoyed my time in other ways. Even sitting at home at times can be an extremely pleasurable activity. Uh, and I think over time I have developed a good social circle here. So I don't think I have a lot of regrets. As for missing Delhi, yes, I do miss the food. But yeah, so New York has given me, because I miss the Indian food and I don't get that easily here, it has given me the opportunity to cook for myself and develop a new skill. So that's pretty much how New York life has been. I've been mostly staying home, stepping out once in a while to meet some friends that I've made over time, and yeah, I'm cooking a lot these days.
Great to hear that. Uh, okay, so can you tell us what are you working on at Tower Research like right now? What is the project that you're working on?
Yeah, so I work as a quantitative trader at Tower Research, and in simple words, we work on writing algos that would trade in the market themselves. They would make trading decisions based on some kind of set of rules and using machine, which are again set using machine learning instead of human beings making subjective decisions. And the role is more of data science rather than finance, because what we essentially need to do over time is look at how markets function, how the market data arrives to us, and how that market data leads to subsequent trading in the market. And using that kind of modeling techniques, we try to predict what kind of prices we would see in the market in the near future and try to trade accordingly. Most importantly, this is like done using very robustly tested techniques, and it's a lot more data science and finance, because we're not really using a lot of fundamental valuation techniques in the market. We're instead learning our algos based on previous data. Of course, like there is some fundamental finance involved as well, but I'd say the bigger challenges lie in data processing and the data side of it rather than the finance side of it.
Yeah, yeah. And now that we have mentioned tower research, so just to uh, go back a little bit, so you interned at Tower in your second year itself, and that is a time when not a lot of people are quite serious about the interns. Like in second year, people are not very serious about their interns, and getting an intern at Tower is might have been a big thing. So how did you decide so early on that finance or maybe an intern at Tower was your calling back then?
Mm. So yeah, interestingly, I got an internship at Tower in a very funny way. So yeah, in my second year, I had a senior of mine, Aman Garg, who had his new startup at that point called Grey Meter that was aimed at helping college students in getting placements. Uh, CV reviews and organizing placement camps, etc. So that was his startup. And in order to popularize his startup, he had a blog component which was used as the marketing strategy for the startup. And there, I had a friend, Sanju, who was already working as a blog writer for him, and she recommended my name that I have a friend who would also like to write, and that's how I met Aman. And I wrote for him for a couple of times, but then he realized that even though I'm a reasonable writer, I can actually I'd be a good data scientist, and that was something he told me, but I didn't take that very seriously. And he asked me for my CV and didn't really tell me why he's asking for the CV. He had a friend at Tower Research, and he forwarded my CV to him for an internship. That's when I got an email from Tower Research that we'd like to interview you and we'd like what times you are free at. And that's when I got to know that I have been so I have applied for an internship at Tower Research. And at that point I didn't know what Tower did and what algorithmic trading is, what high frequency trading is. So I talked to a lot of my seniors at that point as to understand what the business of Tower Research is like, what kind of things I need to prepare for the interview. Uh, the good part was that the interview wasn't, something different. It was pretty much based on the courses that I was doing. They asked me most of algos and discrete maths and probability theory, which was something that I was at that point strong at. And the interview went well, and I eventually ended up in an internship. But yeah, as a second year student, I was pretty much like most other second year students, where I did not really know what I wanted to do and what I was looking for in my long career.
Yeah. And how was the experience? Like, did you ever imagine that you would be working for Tower full time after 2 years?
The internship experience by itself was good. That, however, it wasn't very at that point. It wasn't very representative of what I'll be doing as a full time hire. So I was among the first few interns that Tower had, and particularly in my team, like that, which is Limestone, I was the first intern. And as you would know, that high frequency trading firms deal with a lot of proprietary data, which is very confidential. A lot of their strategies are confidential. So it is, a kind of challenging task to have an intern who would do meaningful work, but without divulging too many details, because the intern may not finally come as a full time hire. So at that point, the work that I was given was less of trading strategies directly, but smaller components that eventually get added up to a trading strategy. I really enjoyed that work, and but yeah, that wasn't really the full picture of what I would be doing at Tower. However, at that point, it did not really matter so much to me. What I realized was, the people around me that I was talking to, they were smart people. They were people I enjoyed talking to. I enjoyed learning from. The kind of work that they were doing sounded interesting to me, at least. The big picture sounded interesting, and the work culture overall was good, and communications aspect was good. The work-life balance was reasonable, unlike what I had heard about most financial jobs. So in that sense, I think at that point I made the decision that this is one of the firms that I would definitely want to work for. Yeah, and just to like complete what I started with, even though my internship wasn't as representative of what my final work was, I think over time Tower has definitely changed that. And the more recent interns that we have had in the last couple of years, they have been given actual trading strategy works, which is more representative of what they would be doing as full-time hires.
Yeah. Yeah. And like just continuing like the intern part. So you interned at Deutsche Bank in your third year, and so how was the experience there, and what did you work on at at Deutsche?
Yeah, so Deutsche Bank was, even though, in the crude classification terminology that we use for jobs in college, both Tower Research and Deutsche Bank would be classified as finance, and rightly so, because, I was dealing with financial markets in both cases. But, if you look at the work in a microscopic view, they were very different. The work cultures were very different. Tower Research was more of, data and tech oriented. Deutsche Bank was, more traditional finance. It was an investment bank. They had clients. There was a sales team. There was a trading team. Whereas, Tower Research, because it's more of a proprietary trading firm, and it's structured as a partnership, so we don't really have clients. We have a very informal work culture where there's no dress code. We typically call each other by names. There was somewhat of a flat hierarchy. Whereas in Deutsche Bank, it was more formal. You had to wear suits every day, and you could not wear the shirts. I was told that formal shirts are supposed to be light colored and not dark colored. I think we had to wear a tie. You had to keep a jacket ready in case there's a big meeting. There were a lot of PowerPoint presentations, and talking to people in big picture, big numbers, and that kind of jargon. So in terms of work culture, it was very different. My project though was, I was on the quant desk even in Deutsche Bank. I was on the US equities quant desk. So there I worked on a very data oriented project again. But of course, it came with a lot of shenanigans. That even though I worked on a very mathematical project, I was implementing trading strategy, but that trading strategy had to be, finally had to present it in the form of PowerPoint. So I think that was the major difference in the work culture and everything. But yeah, it was again a finance internship.
Yeah, and I think you finally chose Tower because of those things. Okay. Okay, so Arpit, there are like talking about finance. There are a lot of myths around a career in finance. Like people think that you need to be inherently good at mathematics, or you need to be from a very core like MNC or computer science branch, or it requires a lot of expertise, and it's not very easy to learn uh, those things in a year or two. So would you simplify those for us, like for a second year or a first year student? How should he pursue, or how should he think about a career in quantitative research?
Yeah, so I think I can't talk for all finance because I have been fortunately or unfortunately exposed to a very limited section of finance, and which is computational finance or quantitative finance. And in that, yeah, you are right that you need to be good at math. However, as most people say, that math is something about practice, math is something about imagination. So it isn't something that is inherently you aren't inherently good at math. I wasn't good at math up till my sixth grade in school. Suddenly I realized that I'm actually interested in it. I started reading about it. I started practicing a lot more than I would normally would, and I over time got good at it. And that kind of phase can come for you at any stage. I know so many people in computational finance who are PhDs but not in math. They are PhD in chemical engineering, PhD in physics, uh, and they suddenly switch to high frequency trading or computational finance. So I think the major that you are in it matters a little because, if you are in computer science, you're doing a lot of mathematical courses which would help you build that kind of expertise. But that's not necessary, and like there are plenty of examples to show that. Having said that, the other thing that you talked about was how should people prepare for it. I think yeah, I think for quantitative finance, it is important to be good at math and discrete math in particular, probability and algorithms, those kinds of things that actually help you. And I think that it doesn't really take too much time to prepare for these things. I think the regular courses that we have at IIT are fairly well designed for the placement perspective as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Uh, so okay, so moving on to projects or maybe life at IIT. So you worked on. So first of all, let's talk about the projects. So like some of the projects that I found very interesting were cognitive modeling of Hindu Urdu comprehension and investigating the determinants of inflation. So like they sounded very cool. So what was the motivation behind these projects? Like any professors or any interesting story that you want to share?
Yeah, so the cognitive modeling of Hindi Urdu comprehension was my BTech thesis, and I worked under Professor Sumit Agarwal and Professor Samar Hussain. And I'd be very frank about this. I did not choose this project. The project chose me. In towards the end of my third year, pretty much everyone in computer science wants to do a project in machine learning. That's what I also wanted to do. But I was late in approaching my professors, and because it was the hottest topic, people had already approached the most sought out professors of machine learning and computer science department. And by the time I went to them, they already had given their BTech projects to students. Or if there were a couple of projects left, they did not. They thought that someone else might be a better fit. So at that point, I realized that Sumit Agarwal also does some good projects in machine learning. So I approached him, and he told me that he actually has a project which is. He actually asked me for some kind of proposal instead of giving me a project. And I told him that I'm interested in linguistics, and I told him some kind of project that I was interested in. It was phonology in computation, and he said that he's not an expert in this, but because you're interested in linguistics, so this is a project I was thinking of doing with Samar Hussain, and we needed a student for this. And that just clicked, and I worked on that project for a year, and it was really good to work on something that I wasn't the cognitive aspect of it, the uh, computational psychology part of it, I wasn't as interested in it, but it was good to work on because the linguistics part I really enjoyed. uh, and the other project of determinants of inflation, that was primarily because I was very interested in economics in college. And the reason for that was actually, if you look at the Department of Economics in IIT Delhi at this point, most professors are very mathematically inclined, very quantitatively inclined. And that's something I really like. Most of the economics courses in IIT Delhi have an econometric aspect to it, where you can, very objectively comment on a lot of things, which in which you don't really have to agree or disagree with your professor. You just have to look at the data and see what the data says. And really enjoyed all those courses. I did a lot of courses under Professor Saurabh Paul when I was in college. I think I did at least 3 courses, and this project in particular, determinants of inflation, this I did with him, and this was more of a course project, but I really enjoyed, all the economics projects that I did with him.
So, Arpit, you like other than academics, also you were a very active part of the community. Like you were an NSS secretary, you were also a BSc journalist. So, how did that experience shape your life?
Yeah. So I was a journalist at the Board for Student Publications, and interestingly, that experience was also very data driven. So the most memorable experiences I have with BSP were of conducting surveys across IIT Delhi, and we used to do a lot of statistical analysis on that, survey piece, and we used to publish that analysis. I really liked that part. And BSP was the first student organization that I joined in college, and that did have, a great impact on how my personality developed over time. I'm sorry, because of BSP, I got to, you know, for a lot of stories, we had to interview professors, interview student representatives, and that's how, I was able to build a certain kind of uh, social circle within college, which, it was hard for me to build otherwise because I wasn't very active in hostel. So that was a good starting point for socializing in college and talking to more seniors than I would otherwise have. And in the next year, I was a secretary at NSS, the social service wing of IIT Delhi. And that's when my social circle outside of the college expanded, because NSS had a lot of uh, collaborations with organizations outside of IIT Delhi, especially in colleges affiliated with the Delhi University. And that's where I got to know a lot more people outside of IIT Delhi. And I got a kind of exposure which I feel that most students at IIT miss out on, which is, talking to people who are not as tech oriented as they are, who are not as math oriented as you are. And how do you, start conversations with people who are not interested in the same things as you are interested in? How do you let go of the jargon that, IIT fills you with? How do you try to convince those? How do you listen to their ideas? And I think, yeah, I became a lot better at communication and socializing because of these two organizations that I was active at.
So, Arpit, for a person like you with a long list of achievements, and so have there been any dull moments in your life where you felt that things weren't going according to you, or you made some bad decisions? So, if there were any, like, how did you overcome those?
Yeah, I don't think I regret any of my decisions as such, but if I look back on my academic life at IIT Delhi, I think yes, there were dull moments because I think I had a very strong inferiority complex when I came to IIT for the first couple of years. And I think that was also coupled with the fact that people had very high expectations of me because I had a good J rank. So people obviously expected
Yeah, exactly.
he is the best, so he would already know everything and he'd be good at everything. That, did not really, nothing works like that. Nobody is, good at everything, especially all the time. So in my first year, we had the computer science course, the introduction to computer science, and I found that hard initially. And I think part of the reason there was, even though I was able to understand most of what the lectures were, I felt a kind of, a feeling. I had a feeling that I was behind a lot of people because most people had computer science in their 11th and 12th grade, which I did not have. So I had very little idea about a lot of the things that were being talked about in that class. And even though I was able to grasp most of it, and later reading that I did, that helped me get at par with the subjects that I was learning. But there was always this kind of feeling that it's so easy for a lot of people who are able to understand it just in the lecture, or they know so much even before the lecture actually happens. But I'm taking so much time to understand everything. So that was a kind of inferiority complex I had in my first semester, which eventually died out because I realized that I was doing just as well as those people were. But in my second and third semesters, we had courses which were more core computer science, and even though those were courses that were new to pretty much everyone in my batch, but there were a lot of people who were a lot better than I was in those courses. There was the data structures course in my second semester, which I found hard. And it wasn't that, I was terrible at it, but I wasn't meeting up to my expectations. Um, I don't know, just to give some context, when I was in school up till my 12th grade, I always got a good percentage in all my exams. And, that's how we measure our performance. And in schools, typically, the exams aren't as difficult or as competitive. So getting anything under 90% was kind of beneath my dignity because of how schools operate. And for a lot of people, humbling experiences in JEE or these competitive entrance exams where even a score of 50% is a very good score. But luckily in my year the exam was easy or something, but I got a 96% even on that exam. So it was, I had never seen a score under 90%, even where traditionally people would have expected to see a lot lower score. And in my second semester, we had the first data structures exam. It was out of 15, and I got a score of 2 out of 15. That was lower than anything I had seen on even other people's exams. So, it wasn't just that I had never seen 15% marks for myself. I hadn't seen 15% marks for anyone. It was like lower than anything anyone can score. And I felt really bad about it, especially because I knew so many people who had a perfect 15 on 15 on that exam, and I felt very demotivated at that point. And similar things happened when in my third semester we had the computer science practices course where we had to code a game, a video game, and I had zero idea about how OpenGL works. I tried to read about it, I tried to practice it. Nothing worked for me. I think those were two courses where I was almost blanked out. I had no clue how things are going to work here. And so there were two reasons why I felt very demotivated during these two courses in particular. One was that I was being really bad at these courses. Two was that I didn't know how to, improve myself at that point, because, sometimes it's like you understand part of it, but not most of it. So the basic solution there is that, you spend more time on it. But in this case, I was absolutely zero. I could not understand any part of it. It was just so foreign for me that it did not even feel like if I spend more time on it, I'm going to get it done. And of course, nobody has infinite time in college. There's so much going on. There are assignment deadlines and everything. So time is also limited. And in these two courses, I think I was also demotivated finally because I felt that these were the core of computer science. As a computer scientist, you're supposed to do data structure, you're supposed to code. And if in the two major core courses, I'm unable to do anything, that means that, I'm not going to do anything throughout my career. So that was the reason why I was extremely demotivated. At that point, I talked to my mentor, who was assigned to me, who was 2 years older than me. And I think he was very inspiring at that point. He told me that, it happens with everyone. There are a few courses that nobody is able, for everyone, there are some courses which are different for everybody, but, you don't feel really comfortable at those. The other thing is what you don't feel comfortable with right now, that may change later. At this point, you don't understand your structures well, but a couple of years from now, you might actually be doing your BTech thesis in the same thing, and you would not even be able to associate with a person 2 years ago who found it so difficult. And those conversations really helped me a lot. And I was able to, get a reasonable grade in my data structures course, but the computer science practices course, I think that course by itself, I think I did not really learn a lot in that course. I did really bad. Both my assignments I didn't do well. I got a really bad grade. I passed it luckily, but got a really bad grade. And at that point I just let it go. Now that the course is over, let it be. Maybe maybe I'll learn coding sometime later, or maybe I'll not. We'll see. But yeah, I think that was a very demotivating period for me. Luckily, after that, courses were more math inclined, or I found some courses which were math inclined, the electives, etc., that I took, which were things that I was more interested in. I was also good at. So things went well, and finally I did end up with a good grade point. I had a good job in the end, so it all worked out. But yeah, I should not forget that there were times when it was very dark and gloomy for me. Yeah, I didn't really know what to do.
Yeah. At these times, it's really good to seek help and like maybe contact your mentors and contact your seniors. I think they can really help you well. So my question to you regarding this would be like if you could look back, or maybe if you could give an advice to your second year self or third year self, so what would that be?
I think I took the right decision of talking to my mentor about it. I think I don't regret that at all. And that's what I would recommend anyone, that, find a kind of support system whom you can trust, and, you can discuss your problems with them. Because a lot of times what happens is that you get your idea of truth gets very eclipsed by your feelings, your perception. So you feel that there's no solution out of this, but there are solutions which you cannot see. So, when you vent out your anger, you are able to, cool yourself down. You're also able to, think more clearly, and also the other person can actually help you. So it's better if, it's a mentor or it's a counselor that you are seeking help from, rather than the internet. Do not go to the internet for help. And
Correct, correct.
other thing is, I think at some point you also need to understand the purpose of what you are doing. So we need not, look at things in a very narrow fashion. It's not that, if you don't have a good grade point at college, that's you can never recover out of it. Of course, it's important to have a good grade point in college. It's important to, end up in a good job. But if you don't, that's not the end of it. You get opportunities throughout your life. And, maybe if you end up in the right place right away, you might be able to reach your goals a couple of years before what you would if you don't end up in the right job. But in the end, we all, reach the same places that we were destined to be in. So as long as you keep working hard, as long as you keep yourself motivated, you will be. There are very few cases where, a single mistake of yours can, cause a permanent damage to you. So even if you screw up a couple of course projects, or if you don't do well in a particular semester, that's not going to impact you in the long run.
Okay, I think we should now talk about JEE and entrance examinations for a while. So you must have heard that this year's the first ranker in JEE Advanced, he is he's receiving a lot of backlash from the internet because he did not join an IIT and study CS there. He instead joined MIT and is studying physics and space settlements there. So what are your thoughts on that?
The first question to you is, who is not receiving hate on the internet these days?
That's a
But
very valid question, but yeah.
but yeah, I think on a more serious note, I think the IITs versus US universities, they are fundamentally different kinds of institutions. IITs are, India's way of higher education, which they try to make it accessible to a lot more people than, if you look at the US universities, they have extremely high tuition fee, extremely selective, and so, they're fundamentally different. Uh, and both have their, advantages and disadvantages. IITs are a lot subsidized, so they're more accessible, they have reservations. So if you belong to a marginalized community, if you belong to a lower income bracket, it's a lot more accessible for you to study at IIT than a foreign university. Uh, Especially, if you're not, because most foreign universities would require you to have a statement of purpose in, English. So especially for people who have difficulty with languages, IITs are a lot more accessible than the foreign universities. For on the other hand, US universities have their own advantages. There might be some very specific departments that you would want to join that you would find it hard to get in India, for instance, if you want to go for astrophysics. Of course, there would be some departments of astrophysics in some IITs, but they would not be, as big and as developed as, some of the US universities. You would probably get better research funding if you're looking for, some capital intensive projects to work on. If you finally want to work in the US, going via the undergrad route in the US is actually a good idea because that helps with the visa processes. So both have their advantages and disadvantages. Both are, fundamentally very different kinds of institutions. They don't target the same audience. They don't have similar goals. So it does not really make sense to compare them. And, if this year's topper actually felt that MIT is a good fit for him, then it is a good fit. I don't think it's anyone's business to be commenting on that.
Okay, so like talking about the current times, I think these are very challenging times for all of us, like the students in college or students who are preparing for IIT. Like it was dragged for a few months and it has been connected now, and they're getting more. Uh, those who could not appear, they're getting more chances to appear. So all these times, how do you take care of your mental health and focus on studies and plan things better?
I think we should all acknowledge that, the pandemic in general, in specific, but, there are other problems as well. They have very different impacts on different people. There is, disease and death everywhere these days, but, even before that, there was poverty, there was hunger. There are bigger issues in life that, most of us privileged people have not ever faced. And I think we should not belittle these issues. We should all acknowledge that the fact that we should be grateful for the privilege that we have and the facilities that we have grown up with. And yeah, I think for the students who are preparing at this point, I think they should recognize that, these are not normal times. So if you are unable to study because of, the lockdown, you're losing your mental peace and everything, it's normal. I think there's nobody who has been able to completely maintain their mental peace throughout this lockdown and throughout the, booming numbers that we see of new cases and deaths. So it's totally normal to feel anxious. It's totally normal to, not be interested in studying at this point. So don't have very high aims at this point that, I need to be able to do the things that I had otherwise planned had the pandemic not happened. That will probably not happen, and it's normal to not happen. Just keep putting in your best. Try to, see how you can make the best of the situation at this time possible. But just keep your, I would say, try, don't ask too much of yourself. These are difficult times. You should try to do the best that you can at this point, which may or may not be the same as what you would have gotten had the pandemic not happened. And we should all be hopeful that, this pandemic is short term. The impacts that it would have would also be short term. We should definitely learn a lot of things from, these difficult times, but we should all be hopeful that at some point the economy would be doing just as well, and we would be back on the streets doing things that we would otherwise have wanted to do. And yeah.
Yeah. We hope it recovers soon. Okay. Last couple of questions. So I know you read a lot, and so any suggestions for our audience?
I don't really recommend books because I don't have, a certain taste. At this point, I'm still exploring and discovering what kinds of books I like. I have a Goodreads account that you can find in the description of the video. So if you want to see the books that I have read or reviewed, you can see those. I try to keep my author list a bit diverse than most people do. So every year I try to read a book which has been written by a woman, which has been written by someone from a marginalized community, because that gives a lot of perspective to life that, we otherwise never have. I think it's the onus is on us to understand how privileged we have been, and the only way you can do that is to listen to the experiences of the less privileged, and that I feel I get through books. So yeah, I think that's pretty much I can suggest. I try to mix and match between fiction and non-fiction, and tech and non-tech. Yeah.
Cool. I think that is all, and that is all for the video. So we are very thankful to you, Arpit, for this interaction and for being a part of Online with Alumni. And we hope that our viewers like this interaction as well, and they take away something from this video, and there's some value that we could add to them. So and thanks again. And for our viewers, we'll be back very soon with another video. And so yeah, stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Varun. It was a very pleasurable experience.